Way up north, way up north, north to Alaska. We're going north, the rush is on. North to Alaska. We're going north, the rush is on.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Cool Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. The first known bark mitzvah, that is, a bar mitzvah for a dog, took place in 1958 in Beverly Hills, California. Monty Hall of Let's Make a Deal was the MC. The event honored the 13-year-old dog of Janet Salter, a newspaper cartoonist and philanthropist, and her husband, Beverly Hills Mayor Max Salter. The guests thought it was hilarious. This was the start of a ceremony that continues to grow in popularity and has in many ways become a serious and beautiful celebration of old dogs and their companions. But the bark mitzvah isn't the only seemingly unusual story involving Jews and canines. Today's guest has a number of such stories.
We're elated to chat with Fred Agni, a resident of Alaska and the first Jew to complete the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog race. Fred's Iditarod bib and other ephemera from the 1984 and 1985 races are on display at the Alaska Jewish Museum in Anchorage. He also designed the Alaska license plate for Iditarod finishers. Fred, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thank you.
So, you arrived in Alaska in 1973, the same year as the first Iditarod race. How did you get involved with mushing and sled dogs?
Well, I hadn't been involved with dogs outside of Alaska, and when I got here, I started handling for some dog mushers who had teams, and then I started putting my own team together.
So what kind of mushing goes on in the lower 48?
There's sled dog races in the lower 48, and Michigan and Vermont and Maine, and Greenland, Canada, Ontario, Quebec.
I think a lot of our audience, including myself, have no real concept of what the Iditarod entails and that kind of thing. Maybe you can take us through some of that.
Well, it's 1,049 miles. And it's run in February and March, but you have to train your dogs so they're all trained up and healthy to run the race. And you run the 1,049, but along the way, there's about 15 checkpoints where you stop and you rest your dog and feed them. And your food is flown into the checkpoints, so you have food for the dog at each of the checkpoints.
Were there any kind of harrowing experiences along the way?
Not so much for me. Other people had. I had a moose come and smack me. Other than that, I had no harrowing experiences.
And you mentioned that the dogs have to be in great shape. I'm sure you have to be in pretty good shape to do that as well.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What is the training for the musher?
Oh, I used to exercise. I used to go, a gym and train in the gym, and I do long walks and runs and stuff, and I work in the gym, so I was trimmed out.
You've also served as the Matsugboro Planning Commissioner and Alaska State Veterinary Examiner. Are you still actively involved with dog sledding in the Iditarod?
No. I go to the race, and a lot of times, beginning of the Iditarod, I'll work at the front line handling dogs and, doing security, but I'm not real involved with the teams anymore.
What's the community like around the dog racing? I imagine it's pretty close-knit and people are supportive of each other and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, they're really good. And the people from all over the world who are involved in that,
And with dog sledding, I imagine it's a way of life in the sense that it's a form of transportation, and in addition to being a competitive race in some contexts like the Iditarod. Do you do it, or have you done it sort of for transportation itself, or is it more recreational?
I've done it I would go to stores and go into town on my dog team. And mainly, I could have gone on a snow machine or in a truck, or I'd take my dogs in town and give them exercise.
Yeah, and the dogs, to your knowledge, enjoy the exercise, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, they had a great time.
So speaking of Mount McKinley, there's a photo of you giving a dog sled ride to Walter Cronkite on Mount McKinley. What's the story behind that photo?
Well, Walter came up to see me. I was up on Mount McKinley, and he came up to see me. And we had dug a big trench before he came up. And we were all down in the trench with our bags. And we were all naked, laying on the bag, getting tan. And I looked up out of the trench, and there was Walter. There's 4 of us in the trench. Here's Walter.
I'm assuming he didn't join you?
No, he didn't. He was real good. I had a good time with him. They made a video of it, but he really enjoyed the trip coming up onto McKinley, or I'll call it Denali. And he enjoyed coming up onto there, and he really enjoyed having a sled dog rider up there.
So in addition to mushing, you're also a graphic designer, and you designed the Iditarod Finisher's license plate. Maybe you can describe what that looks like for our listeners.
It's a license plate and has a sled dog on the left. And on the top, it says Alaska. And then down the bottom, it says Iditarod Finisher. And then the number inside there.
How many finishers have those license plates?
Oh, about 150.
And you notice them sometimes around town?
Every once in a while, I'll see one.
Must be like a secret society or something like that. A little club you have.
Well, the white sled dog on the plate was my lead dog. So it's nice to see the plate because it was my dog. And it's a white dog, and his name was Blackie.
You also have signs on buildings in Trapper Creek, Tahkeetna, and Anchor Point, Alaska. What got you into that line of work? Do you have a background in arts?
Well, my father was into designing labels. So I spent some time with him. And then when I got to Alaska, I was into graphics, and I saw that making signs there was a good market for it.
When you finished the Iditarod race in 1984, you were the first Jew to do so. Dog sledding isn't something we necessarily associate with Jewish culture. Do you see sledding as a part of your Jewish identity?
Oh, it is now, and there's been many Jewish mushers after me.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Were you a mentor, or you just sort of noticed that there were more Jewish mushers following in your footsteps?
Oh, I was kind of a mentor, and I sort of helped a few of them. But because I was doing it, the other ones thought that they might do it as well. My lead dog, his name was God, dog spelled backwards. And then other dogs in my team were Sodom, Gomorrah, Schlepper, Ghana, Mamzer, Chazerai, all Yiddish names.
Are you familiar with the bar mitzvah and that phenomenon of having a bar mitzvah for your dog?
Kind of, yeah. And I've been to a lot of bar mitzvahs and helped with bar mitzvahs in Anchorage at the Chabad there.
Right. And the Jewish Museum is attached to the Chabad, I understand.
Yes, it is.
When you were growing up, I think in Philadelphia, if your sweatshirt is accurate, did you have kind of a maverick streak and see yourself maybe going out and going off into the wild and that kind of thing someday?
Oh, yeah. Well, I left Philadelphia. I went to Israel for a while, and then I went to South Africa for a while. And then in 1973, I left South Africa and went to Alaska.
Well, in celebration of your 50 years in Alaska, your friends and loved ones made a sign for you with your picture and the words, Alaska's Wilde Chaya, using a Yiddish term meaning a wild or rambunctious person. You've been on a lot of wild adventures over the years. Are there any that maybe stand out in particular, maybe ones that earned you the title Alaska's Wilde Chaya?
No, well, I spent time climbing Mount McKinley, guiding Mount McKinley climbs, Denali climbs, and I spent time running dogs in Antarctica. And I traveled around a lot, doing adventures. in the world. I went to Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and then I got a job driving a truck for a contractor. I was in uniform, but I wasn't technically an IDF. And then the war broke out, so I drove a fuel truck all during the war. And then after that, we went up and climbed Mount Sinai and came back, and then I was a prison guard. I was wounded in 6-day war in Israel. Bucky Zimmerman from Brooklyn, his rifle went off, went through a shed and hit me in the chest. So I was wounded in the war, but I was wounded by Bucky Zimmerman from Brooklyn.
Well, I hope the injury wasn't too severe.
Well, it went through a shed before it hit these, so it slowed the bullet down a lot.
Could you tell us a little bit about the time you spent living in Spain, working on spaghetti westerns with the likes of Clint Eastwood?
Well, somebody came into the village I was staying in Spain and went around asking for, young people to volunteer to be in the movie. I was in Good, Bad, the Ugly, Hang 'em High, Doc, Fistful of Dollars, Captain Apache, and a couple others. And me and I wasn't a special actor. I was with with a bunch of other kids in the movie dressed in cowboy outfits.
So we might see you in the background and as an extra, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I was making incredible money. I think I was making $18 a day plus lunch.
And it wasn't spaghetti for lunch, was it?
No.
So I read that in 1980, you were one of the last 2 people to carry out the U.S. Census by dog team. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I knew people who ran the census in Anchorage, and part of the interior of Alaska, there was a problem with the federal government and the people who lived in the interior of Alaska. There were some political problems with them. And they hired me to do the census up there because they didn't want to send a regular federal employees up into there. So they hired me to do the census by dog team because they knew that I would be accepted if I came in there by dog team. So I did the census by dog team in the interior. 2 other guys, 3 of us on dog team.
So there was a Washington Post reporter who saw you taking the census and heard you speaking Yiddish. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I was talking to, there was this Jewish guy up there, and the reporter was there and he heard me speak. I mean, I'm not real fluent, but I know a whole bunch of words and phrases.
Yeah, well, the reporter was certainly impressed enough to write an article about it. Finding the Yiddish speaker in Alaska, I think to him was a very novel thing.
Now, he liked my T-shirt. I had a T-shirt that said "Kish Mein Tochus" in Yiddish and Hebrew on it. So he really liked that.
I want to ask you a question just to kind of circle back. What drew you to living in Alaska? I know there was your interest in dogs and your involvement with that, but is there something about Alaska that is appealing to you as a place to live?
Yeah, I really liked it. A good adventure. I came up here, actually just came up to visit. And while I was here, I got a job on the Alaskan pipeline. I was in my 20s making $93,000 a year driving a truck on the pipeline. So, and then they had homesteading, and I got a 160-acre state homestead land and built a cabin on it, and I wound up staying in Alaska. When I got my homestead, I built a cabin, but there's no electricity in that area, and there was no running water. So I used to pull my water out of the pond, and the pond would freeze. So we had a wooden box over the pond, and it was all insulated, and we'd have to smash the ice out. We found some water, and we didn't realize the moose had pooped in the water hole. So we made tea, and after a while, we looked back down in the water hole, and there was moose poop in there. So we had moose poop tea.
Well, you can be honest. How did it taste?
Oh, it was nice. And electricity, if I wanted to have any electric, I had a little generator, and I had like a little radio, with a battery in it. So, and lights are all kerosene lamps, no electric lights.
I'm wondering, are you kind of connected with the Alaskan Jewish community? Do you have a relationship with it, or, ways that you might describe, I don't know, your awareness of it at least?
Well, I'm the one that made up the phrase frozen chosen. And we go up maybe about once a month or so, we go up to the Chabad, the Orthodox synagogue in Anchorage. But we're 220 miles from there, so we only go maybe once a month. We keep kosher in our house, and we say prayers on Friday night. We light candles.
Yeah, that's amazing that you came up with the term frozen chosen. Do you remember the story behind coming up with that and seeing it catch on in the way that it has?
No, it just came into my head, so I started using it.
Our audience is primarily Jewish, primarily urban, coastal, that kind of thing. So if you could tell us maybe like a bird's eye view of just life in Alaska, I think that would be pretty interesting and informative.
Well, it's kind of rural, and all the people here are kind of outdoorsy people, and they're all active people. You know, it's not real urban, and I like the people here, and people come from all over the world here to like have adventures in Alaska. The people who come here are very interesting. I was Sarah Palin's high school teacher. Her name was Sarah Heath then, Heath, and she was in one of my classes when I was teaching school in Wasilla, Alaska. I was doing phys ed classes, and she was in one of my classes. That's my only high school story I have. Yeah.
I think she's one of the few household names that, at least in contemporary culture, people know is from Alaska.
Yeah, we still sit here every once in a while too. And of course, it's really pretty here. The land is, and the mountains are really wonderful too. And we have the beach and the shore and incredible fishing, halibut fishing. The town I live in is the halibut capital of the world, Homer, and there's great halibut fishing here.
Thank you so much, Fred, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.